everyone, welcome to Adkins Academy, if that's how you're watching this video. I wanted to get on here because I'm an author and I wanted to share with you the Braille curriculum, Ducking Into UEB, which you see me holding up here. It was written by my friend Shannon and myself, and Shannon is also known as S.J. Wells, by the way. That is Shannon Wells. Shannon Kunsel did the cover that you see, and Heather Katz did the tactile videos. I mean, not the tactile videos, but the tactile pictures. So this book, I'm going to just open it somewhere in the middle, which you probably won't be able to read, but that's okay. You'll get to see kind of a little bit of it. This book is arranged in two parts. Part 1 is uncontracted Braille, and Part 2 is contracted Braille. And Part 1 starts out teaching the alphabet, and it teaches some punctuation and some basic math, like how to do electronic addresses. And then you move into Part 2, where you start out with alphabetic word signs, and then I don't know if I remember all the way through after alphabetic word signs, but I think then next is group signs and short form words and initial, lower, and final letter contractions are way at the end. So in each section you have a pre-test, post-test. You have class discussion, which is basically me teaching as if I were the teacher, and that's really just a guide if you're a seasoned teacher, or if you're comfortable just teaching on your own. You don't need that, but it's there for you as a reference, and if you want to teach directly from it, you're more than welcome to. And then the exercises start out with a word drill, and that's not really meant to be a test. It's just meant to be a checkup of what does the student know. And there's lots more words than you'll ever want to read in here, but I'd rather have too many than not enough, and you can use them for all different things. You can use them for time drills if you want, a page for time drills. You could just use a page for reading practice, and then after that, word practice, you have some phrases in Part 1 and some sentences in Part 2. So you can read those phrases or sentences, and then there's other exercises depending on what part. For example, there's rhyme time, where I might give you a word like snow, and then the alphabetic word sign to rhyme that with that might be go, for example. Some of this you'll want to read to the kids. Some of this you'll want the kids to read to you. Some of this they won't know how to read, so you can just let them track as you read, and that gives them tracking practice. And other exercises in here, guess the word, which you'll have to read the clue. And I always try to tell them, think, what words are we working on in this lesson? But if they guess a word that's still correct, that's not in the lesson, that's perfectly okay. There's a fill in the blank section where, we're working on context clues. So there's a sentence, and then there's like 4 choices for them to fill in the blank. There's also where I will say, for example, dots 1, 2, and they have to say the letter B. Or I might say, in another part of the exercise, I might say C, and then they would call out the dots that represent C, 1 and 4. So that's another kind of exercise. As you get into Part 2, I think it's lesson 9 of Part 2, you start with some find the error activities. Help them kind of for Braille Challenge to get used to finding those errors. So those types of exercises are in here. Anyway, and then the goal of the book is, my friend Shannon, the other author, wrote a book called A Quackin' Adventure, which is completely at the end, and I'm probably not going to accidentally land on it, but I'll try. I don't know if I did. Anyway, A Quackin' Adventure is a story about a duck family that goes on an adventure down the river. So throughout the book, what the kids are doing is they're getting messages from the ducks. Like Daddy Duck starts talking, and then Mall Duck, she comes in to play, and basically they guide the kids into doing different activities. Like Daddy Duck has lost his keys, and he's going away to find them, and so the Mama Duck comes out and gets you to help her look for 5 things around the house that they can take for snacks on the trip down the river, and different things all the way through to closer to the end of the book. The goal is that they actually make a tactile map of the duck as he's going down the river. And so that's just kind of a basic overview, and it provides the motivation for the kids in there, of course. And what I tried to do is I tried not to introduce letters or contractions until they're used, but I am human, and so there are probably some errors in there that if I get around to doing it, I'll do another version. So that's Ducking Into UEB, my cousin's copy, so she's got it all rolled up. This is another little reading book that I have written. This is called Good Friends, and it's available on Amazon, just like Ducking Into UEB. Now, Ducking Into UEB, which is this textbook, it's also available for like $9.99 or something like that in an electronic version, or you can buy the hard copy for $50 on Amazon. This little book is recently published through Pennant Publications, and illustrated by Savannah Horton. And Savannah Horton is an illustrator that was picked by Pennant Publications, and she did an outstanding job, I think, with the photos. This is a reading book, okay? So this isn't just a storybook that the kids would take home. This is a reading book. Maybe even, maybe you have a first grader, and the first grader is a struggling reader if it's a kid with vision. You could give them, this book and let them practice on things. It works on kind of things, like, for example, there's an ox in the story, okay, which is OX. Later on in the story, then we can put in a box because we add that B to the beginning. Or the word "and" at the beginning on the first 2 pages. Eventually, we add a T to turn "and" into "ant." So they're working on building beginning and ending words. All the words are sight words, so it's giving them, some fluency practice. Working on, like, Ev is one of the characters. He's Ev because he doesn't have an E at the end of his name, and then Ev eventually turns into Eve way at the end of the book. So this is really a reading book. It's not like it is got stories in it, and I'm going to just flip it open here so you can see it. So this is somewhere in the book. I don't know what we're viewing here, but, and then let me turn a page back so you can see whatever this is. So what happens is the kid can read the text, or maybe you have a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old that can't read yet. When they could just turn the page, look at the pictures, and tell the stories. Like somewhere in here, there's a picture of a train. I don't know what we're at here, but so the child can look at the pictures and tell their own story. And when they or if they're a struggling reader, you can have them read, and that's for kids with vision. So share this with your teachers that work with kids who don't have vision problems. I'm hoping to get this published in Braille at some point, and I don't know when that will happen, because the real goal of this book was to take kids from reading single cell contractions, like at the beginning of Building on Patterns. They have the kindergarten series where they're working on, words like alphabetic word signs, and then I think they add in a couple like we and I don't remember all of them. But then they go right into Not Far From Home, which I thought had like 4 cells, and I wanted a bridge from 1 cell to 2 cell to 3 cells. So Good Friends kind of does that. If you notice, good is in Braille's just GD. That's 2 cells. And up until we get to the word ant, we only have 2 cell contractions. And so if you're using this book and you're not a Braille user and you're thinking, why is there big words on this page? Or why is this kind of like a Dick and Jane book, back in the old days, Basil readers? Why is it kind of like that? It's because I was only able to use a certain number of contractions. For example, on page 1, when you, which is you are the reader, when the reader is responding to the characters in the story, they're interacting, and if the ox, whose name is Will, he asks a question like, do you like Ev? He might ask. Well, you can't say yes, because yes is 3 cells, Y, E, and S. But you can say okay, because if we just spell it okay, which is what we did, because that's only 2 cells. You can use the word said, because in Braille, said is only represented by the letters S, D. Okay, so whereas in print it's 4 cells, S-A-I-D, 4 characters, in Braille it's only 2. Little is another good example. It says in the first page, I think, I am little. Little in Braille is only LL, so it's 2 characters in length, whereas in print it's 6 characters in length. So as a result of that, it was kind of a little bit challenging to write, in that I could only use certain words. But when we get to the ant, then now you can start saying yes, because now we're at 3 cells. And it never moves to 4 cells, but by the time you read this book, then you should be able to pick up a couple Dr. Seuss books and move hopefully on into more natural reading, which is really what you want. You want kids to really be reading real fiction. So this is just, this book's goal as a Braille curriculum is to get kids to do that. And so the goal for me is to get it into Braille, and it might end up on Bookshare, but I would kind of like to see if I could get it as a twin vision. I don't know what's going to happen with that yet. So anyway, so these are the 2 books so far that I have. Another one coming out called Counting Memories. So you can, if you're interested in them, the Counting Memories is not a reading curriculum like these 2 books. It is just a counting book that I wrote that has something one of my family members has, and then something that I have that makes me think of that family member, and then it's going to have a coloring page so the kids can color. So that's its goal. We'll see how it ends up, but it's going to be coming out, I don't know, later this year probably. So anyway, thank you for joining me, and again, Anita Adkins, if you're interested in these, just go on Amazon.com, and in the search box, just type in Anita Adkins. Anita's A-N-I-T-A, and Adkins is A-D-K-I-N-S.